Welcome to Family Addiction Coaching, a podcast about families supporting a loved one with addiction. Each episode will provide insight into a real family's experience, what families find useful and not, what is available in the community, and what would help make their journey easier. Similar to what happens in our coaching service, we'll discuss how families have encouraged their loved one into recovery, as well as their own family recovery. We'll also discuss harm reduction, an especially useful approach for those with no current interest in recovery. I'm your host, Patrick Doyle of Family Addiction Coaching. With a master's degree in social work, I'm licensed by the state of Massachusetts and comply with the strict code of ethics of the National Association of Social Workers. The purpose of this episode is to describe how families with addiction can benefit from the services of family addiction recovery coach Laurie MacDougall. Through her weekly online support groups, you will learn three things. First, you will learn steps you can take today to reduce your loved one's substance use. Number two, you'll learn how you can engage a person into treatment. And thirdly, you will learn how to improve your quality of emotional, physical, and relationship life. Unlike much of the traditional help for families, these are not just empty promises. Laurie uses CRAFT, a cognitive behavioral therapy shown in medical studies to be far and away the most effective approach for reaching these goals. You can start to make your life better today by listening to this conversation and contacting Laurie. Like every aspect of family addiction coaching, this episode is all about lifting up, encouraging, and celebrating the millions of families who refuse to give up on persons with addiction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda. I'm an advocate in sustained recovery from addiction, and Patrick asked me to guest host this episode so we can discuss the importance of saving yourself and your family from addiction. So I'm here with two family addiction experts, and I can't wait to hear what advice they have for everyone. First, we have Laurie MacDougall. She's the founder and director of REST, support and educational groups for families that holds virtual weekly meetings and CRAFT training for families struggling with addiction. Hi, Laurie.
Hi, Amanda. How are you?
I'm good. And we also have the founder of this podcast, Patrick Doyle of Family Addiction Coaching. Patrick is a licensed social worker who provides remote private coaching and support for families experiencing and navigating addiction. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, Amanda. Hey, Laurie. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Thank you both for taking the time to have this conversation. Laurie, can you tell listeners a little about your story and why you founded REST?
Yeah, sure. Quite a few years ago, I want to say back in 2012, I found my son overdosed in his bed. That day kind of changed my life around, changed my whole career, everything that I was focused on. Previous to this, I was a high school math teacher. But after that experience, I personally experienced post-traumatic stress syndrome, diagnosed, and I started going to a lot of the traditional support groups and attending traditional type counseling sessions for family members that have a loved one with substance use disorder. And I found that I wasn't getting what I believed that I needed. And then I have a cousin actually who went through the same exact thing, almost identical experience a year before me. And she told me about something called CRAFT, Community Reinforcement and Family Training. And so I went and Googled CRAFT, and I found this website out of Massachusetts, Allies in Recovery. And the Allies in Recovery website is a website with video modules and e-learning modules. So there's videos and exercises for family members to utilize, and it teaches CRAFT. And so I started implementing CRAFT after a couple of years of struggling with my son's substance use disorder. And I started having some pretty strong successes in helping to usher him into recovery. It helped to improve my overall mental health, and it created a much better relationship with my son so that I could kind of help guide and influence him in a way to into, I wouldn't say recovery, but I would say into a more positive direction in life. And then I kind of found out, actually, someone came to me and said, hey, we have nothing in the state of Rhode Island. There's nothing there. There's no meetings. There really isn't anything offered to families with a loved one with substance use disorder. And he had suggested that we try and start something in Rhode Island. And I thought, I have this great idea. Why don't we start some group meetings, but let's change it up and not do what's kind of already out there, because programs like Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, Learn to Cope, Codependence Anonymous, they were all well established and really can be incredibly helpful to family members. But I wanted to start something that was a little bit different. So something that wasn't just support, but was actually education. And I wanted it to be founded in these, in craft strategies and skills. So that's how REST got started. We started in the state of Rhode Island. And what we do in REST is we listen to families. If a family member needs to come and vent and talk about what's going on in their life, we absolutely are there. We're there to hear these stories, but we are also there to learn strategies and skills that are going to make a difference in the family situation. So that's basically how REST got founded.
Can you give me an example of one of the craft strategies and skills?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a ton of them. So tons and tons of all sorts of strategies and skills in the craft methodology. So the foundation, I would say, are actually three aspects. The first one is communication, positive communication. And I think families would be incredibly surprised what positive communication actually is. And oftentimes, plenty of families will come into a REST meeting and will learn some new communication strategies. Just for example, reflective listening, or something called PIUS, positive I statements, understanding statements, be short and specific, request, don't demand, own your own piece in it. Validating, empathizing, all of these different strategies that you learn how to creatively use, as well as how can you take these skills and strategies and apply them to your specific family situation. And that I would say is the biggest foundation of craft. And then after that, there's two other incredibly supportive pieces. One is learning how to reward positive behavior, and then also learning how to disengage in the moment from the individual when there's using behavior or any kind of difficult behavior that's happening. So it's an implementation of these three things: really positive communication, reinforcing positive behavior, and disengaging when there's difficult behavior.
So it sounds like it helps family members kind of like take action in order to learn, instead of getting overwhelmed and overburdened with trying to fix this situation, like so many people do. I mean, a crisis situation happens in the family and it's stressful and you want to fix it and it's all you can think about. But it seems like craft gives people like techniques to manage and improve the situation overall.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it absolutely gives family members, and I'm just remembering back to when I first started on my journey. One of the things that I was always stressed out about was just give me something to do. Just tell me something, anything that I can do. I was told constantly over and over and over again that there's nothing you can do. You have to let go, right? You have to get out of the way. I found it incredibly frustrating. And craft helped kind of fill that missing piece in for me, because I learned that there are things I can do. It might not be what I want to do, it might not be what I thought I could do, but there are things that I can do to help make the situation better. So I think that's a lot of what craft will kind of give you, something to do.
If you could summarize it, like, how do you think craft differs from 12-step programs such as AA and Al-Anon? And does craft have mantras? And
It doesn't. And Patrick, you and I can kind of, I'm sure you can kind of add a little bit in here. But that's actually one of the things that I struggled with. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Al-Anon. I love my Nar-Anon programs. They really, really helped me. And when I tell you I attended those meetings religiously, I did. And they helped me to reflect on myself and helped me turn things around and start to focus on things that were going to be beneficial. But there were some things that I really struggled with. And actually, it's the anecdotal things. And I know Patrick and I feel similar about this, but let them hit rock bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Oh, yeah, no. To be honest with you, if I was to let my loved one, my son, hit rock bottom, he wouldn't be here. So to me, that piece of it didn't make sense to me.
It pains me to think about how many we have already lost because of just that very advice about you can't do anything, you're enabling, you, the family, are codependent, you have an illness, you need to get treatment, and everything that all your natural instincts on how to help your loved one, they're all wrong. So stop enabling. How many people have we lost because of that being the predominant narrative that most families get, the only narrative that most families get?
Right. I totally agree with you. And you and I have talked about this in the past. And I totally agree with you, because if I honestly had let my son hit rock bottom, finding him overdosed, if that isn't rock bottom, then what
Right.
is? Then
That's
what
pretty
is?
low.
And that's one of the things that I like about craft is you have to take safety and sanity into consideration when you're implementing these different types of skills and strategies. So just for example, let's say your loved one comes home and after a night out of partying, and they pass out in the driveway, and you're trying to determine whether you want to let natural consequences happen or not. And natural consequences would be to let your loved one stay out in the driveway, sleeping, passed out overnight, right? But if I'm living in New England and it's February and it's, the wind chill factor is, 30 degrees below zero, maybe someone might be coming home and drive and hit them, or I don't know what, but I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to allow for natural consequences under those circumstances. Maybe different circumstances. Maybe I'm living in Florida and it's only 70 degrees out. I don't know. But that's one of the things that is different about craft than some of the 12-step programs is it's a way to it's a structure. It's literally a structure for you to kind of pass your thoughts and ideas through and find a way to implement this specific to your situation. So you can get really creative, and everything is not black and white. Like, I might not let my loved one sleep in the driveway, but maybe on a Saturday morning when I know they have something that they're supposed to go and do and it's important to them, maybe then I allow for natural consequences and I don't go wake them up and remind them. Right? So it depends. Craft is like that. It gives you that flexibility to decide, how am I going to use this in my situation with what's going on with my family?
Instead of beating yourself up, wondering if you're enabling or not enabling and all that sort of stuff.
Right. And I would say this, I hate those words. I hate codependency. I hate enabling. I hate them. They've been weaponized against, right? And I would say this, I don't see families as enablers. I see families as people who love their loved ones so much, just desperately searching for answers, and they just haven't found any that are working for them. And that's what I see. And I see craft as offering something different, something that they may not have ever come across before, and something that has some pretty solid evidence to back it up, that it works well with a lot of different people.
Yeah, my parents worried for years that they had enabled me. And I kept telling them, like, it's not what it's about. You guys were there for me. You helped me get to rehab. You took me in, like that. And I'm sober now. You know, there was no enabling going on, but it's like that word.
If that's true, if you're enabling because you let your loved one live in your house, if you're enabling because you're giving your loved one food or a phone, or you're paying for rides or a car or whatever it is, boy, then I did an awful lot of it. And it wasn't until my loved one came home and let me enable him with all of these things that he went into recovery. So when people say things like, you know, you're enabling use, well, that's not what happened with us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Same with me too. Yep.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, why is it so important for families to find recovery?
Where do I start? Craft is based on research. It's a cognitive behavioral therapy. People with substance use disorders often report that their family's influence prompted them to seek treatment. We also know that the family members' extensive contact in interactions with their loved one using substances has been helpful in changing the problem behavior. And we found that families have been crucial allies, collaborators in treatment. We have research that has shown that including the family in treatment of addiction improves treatment outcomes for the person with the addiction. Another reason is, if we look beyond the person with the addiction, if we look at the family and how the disease impacts the family, so often the families they're basically so stressed out, financial problems, marital conflict, lack of support, the tension. When there's active addiction in the home that is out of control and highly problematic, there's this tension in the home that never leaves, even if you're having a calm day. It doesn't go away. You have learned through experience, you never know when a conflict is going to arise, or you never know when your loved one is going to come home. The stress and tension never leaves. Working with a lot of families, you just see it in them. They do ask for support, they ask for help, they ask for treatment for themselves, because they are really suffering. They're suffering in many times, in many situations, as much as the person with the addiction is suffering.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look at the incidence of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, etc., within families with addiction, it's at a very high rate. These families deserve recovery and health just as much as anyone does.
I agree with you, Patrick. And I would even go so far as to say that actually that tension and that anxiety that never goes away, that family members are carrying around with them, is compiled by their own problems, right? Their own issues that are also co-occurring, but also contributes to the substance use disorder, right? It actually contributes to it adds stress onto your loved one and making it really difficult for anybody in the family to deal with what's going on, even when the loved one goes into recovery.
When things degenerate over time, what's the typical reaction of the family to the person with the addiction? Anger, frustration, fear, yelling, putting the person down, calling the person with the addiction selfish. How many times do we think that that actually would motivate a person to pursue treatment and try for recovery?
Yeah, actually, not very often. And in fact, I would say that kind of piles on and adds stress, making it less and less and less likely that the person is going to be able to overcome and maintain any form of recovery.
The person being hit with that kind of criticism, in most cases, it makes them feel ashamed. It's painful to the person with the addiction. What do? They turn to the only coping strategy they know to deal with that, and that is the use of substances.
Right. I totally agree. And I also think that the family member's journey parallels the loved one with substance use disorder. And I think that a lot of those very difficult behaviors that are being experienced, it's just, again, expressions of the same type of thing that the family member is expressing, right? It's fear, it's anxiety, it's frustration, it's depression, it's sadness. And then I think also the family member is experiencing the same stuff. And that's the only way anybody knows how to express it. I'm going to beg you and I'm going to plead with you. I'm going to do anything and everything. I mean, intentions are all good, right? Intentions are all good because the family member just wants to save their loved one. They just don't want their loved one to use. They love them so much. And so they're experiencing a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of frustration. And out of that, nobody can think of any good ways of coping with those kind of feelings. And so it comes out this way. And I think that craft, that's a part of craft, is, believe it or not, learning these positive communication skills as well as positive interactive skills helps calm the family member down so that they're better
Yes,
able to cope and better able to
absolutely.
interact with their loved one.
I recently was formally trained in the craft method by the creator of craft, Dr. Bob Myers. So am exposed and am going for certification through craft as a craft certified trainer. For example, on the communication skills training, these are such good basic communication skills, like making I statements. I feel, this is my perspective, joining the person in sharing some responsibility to make improvements. There is some basic communication skills there that I think are universally useful in just being human beings and relating with each other. So I've been practicing them myself with my loved ones, whether they have a substance use disorder or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool stuff. It's really good information. And I used to think that I knew a lot about good sound communication skills. Learning about this through this course, I'm back in school now. It's really useful stuff.
Can family members learn some of the craft tools like without going all in? I mean, how does that work if somebody's interested in it? What if they just want to kind of dip their toe in? Or I mean, how would they like, can they do that? Can they pick and choose what they
Yeah, great question. There's more than one material that one can use. The one thing that I would recommend, maybe above all else, is for a family to purchase a book called Get Your Loved One Sober by Robert Myers, PhD. You can get it on paperback version, $11. It's a fairly short book, but it was written so that families could use it themselves, even if they did not have access to therapists or trainers or clinicians. Ordinary families and ordinary people can read the information and about the theory, the method, do the exercises that are suggested in the book. And research has shown that even without any kind of outside support, for a family to read the book and do the activities and practice, they can bring 40% of their loved ones into treatment just through that support alone.
Right.
If one is using craft and has been trained on it and has professional support from a trainer, a therapist, clinician, coach, research has shown that there's a 70% chance of bringing your loved one into treatment. And if you think about it, for any kind of medical illness, a 70% success rate in bringing someone into treatment is really amazing for any kind of illness.
Yeah.
And if you think about addiction, which has the reputation of being particularly challenging to treat or to attract people into treatment, it's even more astounding. Once you start learning this information, you can believe the statistics because it's so intuitive. The families that we have coming to ask us about craft or even to ask us about what to do about their loved one, they are hungry for information that builds them up, that supports the family's strengths, supports their loved one, and respects their loved one. They've already been through other information that puts them down, that blames them, that faults them, that tries to tell them what to do, even though they don't have any idea what the individualized situation is. So what we find is that the families that do well with craft are families that they've probably already been through a process of looking for easy answers or quick solutions, and they haven't found it. For example, letting someone hit rock bottom. If they've tried to do it, they either couldn't stand it for very long or they couldn't even bring themselves to try that. They've not found a home with other approaches. So that when they come to us, they are the kind of family that is willing to do some work on themselves, on changing their own behavior. And they understand that these are generally nuanced problems that don't have simple universal solutions, but you have to figure it out over time. Those are the families that tend to work best with us and with what we have to offer. They do really well, sometimes even in a matter of one or two craft sessions with a craft trained therapist or clinician or coach. The families are noticing an improvement in their behavior and also in the home and in the behavior. It quickly can reduce the tension when the family starts emphasizing, well, for example, a family that I have worked with, the person with the addiction was not able to come to work. That person had been hired by his parents to work in the family business. Through substance use, the person was not coming into work, but the person was calling in sick when he couldn't come into work. So just a suggestion to the parents of thanking him for calling in sick, rather than just blowing it off or trying to work when he was impaired, the parents started doing that. They said that it made them immediately, once they started doing that, instead of questioning or interrogating their son, why didn't you make it today? For them just to say, hope you're feeling better soon. Sorry to hear that you can't come in, but I really appreciate you taking the time to let me know. And so that way I know what's going on. Just little changes like that helps the family feel better.
Right. There's two things that I want to clear up about craft that I think people come into craft thinking very specific things And I want to kind of clear that up. The first one is that when we say that craft helps, that 70 to 74% of people go into treatment, right? One, it's important to note that the typical patient is what they consider to be treatment resistant, meaning that it's been very difficult to get that loved one into treatment. And it's also important to note that when we say that craft has a 70 to 74% success rate of getting your loved one into treatment within, I want to say it's something like the first 12 weeks. We're talking about it was the person's idea, the family just supported it. And that's an important piece that, because you'll hear high numbers of this particular method will also get your loved one into treatment 80% of the time. But then when you look into it, oftentimes it's coerced or it's forced. And this is not. Craft is about supporting your loved one's thoughts. It's about meeting your loved one where they're at and helping to support their ideas. So that's the first piece of it. The second thing that I want to clear up, a lot of people think that when we talk about positive communication, that we're talking about conversations with your loved one that is now they're always going to be flowery and positive and all loving, and there's going to be nothing difficult in that conversation. But it's important to note that that's not true. that these positive skills and strategies that you're going to learn, you're going to be speaking more positively and in a more positive way, so that you can have these difficult conversations, but in a more positive way on your piece of it. It doesn't mean that your loved one isn't going to be upset or you're not going to be discussing difficult topics. It actually means that you're going to have a better grasp on how to have these difficult conversations.
And a lot of people struggle with that. We should probably wrap it up right now. And I'm going to end with one last question, because actually I believe you guys answered the listener question that I had, which was about a person with substance use disorder or in recovery, if they ever understand how their actions affect their partner or spouse or their family. And you guys basically answered that earlier, so that was awesome. But I'm wondering, what are some actionable steps that family members can take right now that can improve the relationship with their loved one who's struggling? Like, what's the one thing that you guys would suggest or recommend, something that they could do just right now, today?
You go, Laurie.
Okay, I would say first step is to start learning about reflective listening and listen. Drop your agenda and start to listen. And just that step alone will take a lot of the negative conversations out. It'll take a lot of negative aspects of the conversation out. And I strongly believe that people heal when they feel heard. And that's why I say it's listen.
I listened to the Allies in Recovery podcast episode about reflective listening just last night, which was pretty good. You guys role played on the episode and went back and forth, and you were a daughter who was calling for gas money, and the mother was like, I hear that you need gas money, and I hear that you need $100 and this, but I can't do that at this time, but I hear you. And I mean, it was just perfect. It was pretty smart. It was a clever and useful tool.
Well, I'll tell you, we do that, Amanda. We do that in rest meetings. We go over reflective listening extensively, and then we role play. We do all of the communication skills. We role play and practice them as much as we can.
And are rest meetings free? Do they cost money?
They do not cost a dime. They are free.
Nice.
So you can access them through the website if you want.
Let's tell everybody how they can find the both of you actually right now. Laurie, how can people find you online and contact you?
Okay, online, if they just go to www.resthelps.org. And also they can contact me through email at lmacdougall. It's LMACDOUGALL at RICARES, RICARES.org.
Awesome. And Patrick, how can listeners find you?
Thanks, Amanda. I can be contacted through my website, familyaddictioncoach.com, and also by emailing me at patrick@familyaddictioncoach.com. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Family Addiction Coaching. And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the show. We'll continue to interview interesting and strong families as long as there is a need for this information in the community. Make sure to visit our website, www.opioidcoaching.com. If you think you might want professional coaching for yourself or your family, Patrick Doyle is available. Have a peaceful day.